All right, welcome to the realm of history for an epic first live stream review tonight, getting you ready for chapter one quiz tomorrow. All right, let's take a look at the agenda tonight. Here's what we're going to be doing. First of all, I'm going to have some key advice for you, get you ready for this session. Number two, we'll talk about some of the key terms, some of the key figures, the key places. I'm going to give you some AP tips and advice to get you ready for the AP portion of the quiz tomorrow. Then we'll have a very important question and answer session, and then some final advice as we end our live stream review tonight. Let's get right into it with the key advice. Before we get there, though, if you're here, let me know in the comments. Give me a shout out. Let me know that you're attending. What I'd like to do is take a look at who attended and how well they did on the quiz. It's not mandatory. Of course, you don't have to be involved at all, but if you'd like to, just let me know that you're here for the session. All right, I've got about 5 points on key advice. Number one, I really think it would be beneficial if you wrote some of the information down tonight, maybe on the back of your review sheet, maybe on a notebook page, but there's going to be some information coming your way that might be new. Maybe we'll rectify some confusion that you might have had, but that's what I would suggest. Number two, make sure that you read through your outline notes. Those are the most crucial study tools in getting ready for a quiz like this. So by reading through your outlines, it's a summary of what's in the text. That's a big picture idea that you really want to start to master. Then another part of writing things down from this session, I would say use your review sheet to quiz and assess yourself. Go ahead and look at the blank part of the review sheet. See if you can answer each of those terms, each of those key figures, each of those key concepts without using what you wrote. If you can do that, you're going to be ready for tomorrow's assessment. Second big picture item that I want to talk about is praying for the right things, right? I don't think you should pray for success on this quiz. Rather, I think you should really understand that there's so many more important things in the world to pray for. For example, what I would encourage you to do is pray for your health, pray for your safety, pray for your family, pray for the good Lord's guidance to use your talents to the fullest, and say the prayer of gratitude daily. One of the things I'd like to say tonight is that while you may be nervous for this quiz tomorrow, we are so blessed. We're so blessed to have those nerves for just an assessment at St. Mary's Prep, right? Think about all those people in the world who are struggling. They're trying to find their next meal. They're trying to survive. We need to think about all the great blessings that we have been bestowed upon. And when you wake up every day, say the prayer of gratitude. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, God, for giving me this day. When you get into the car and it actually starts and you're safe, thank you, Lord, for letting me get to school safely. I think if you could do that, you're going to have a successful day and you're going to develop a relationship that will really help you in life. Third, our motto, be here now, right? Never is this more important than tomorrow. When you come in the realm, I need you to pop in history and be here now, focused on the task at hand. Forget about everything else that's going on and just give your undivided attention to the assessment tomorrow. If you can focus, you'll be a champion. This is why I teach you the Be Here Now strategy. That's what it's all about. It's about zeroing in, locking in on your goal of doing well on this first assessment tomorrow. Number four, I think we forget about this quite a bit, but really you need to say thank you to your parents, right? I'm a parent myself. They do so much for you. So please be grateful to them. If you need to stop this session right now just to go tell them that you love them, to go tell them thank you, then feel free to do that. But please do that before you go to bed, right? They have done so much for you. You're in a great spot. Your parents, your grandparents, your family members, express gratitude to the people who are important in your life. Finally, and maybe one of the most important messages tonight, meet the challenge, right? I am going to challenge you with this quiz. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think it's the hardest quiz of the year. I would actually say it's the easiest quiz of the year because it's the first one. But it's going to be a challenge because you don't really know what to expect until you get into that bad boy. Okay. So what you need to do is you can't shy away. Don't skip school. Don't skip class. Don't get phantomly sick and go home. No, you meet the challenge. The only way you're going to get stronger as a student is by meeting challenges, rising to the occasion. Here's what you need to do. As long as at the end of tomorrow's day, you can go home and look yourself in the mirror and say, I gave my best effort. I studied to the best of my ability. You will be a champion. That is a win if you put in the proper effort. So once again, don't shy away from challenges. Go after challenges, attack them, take them head on. Let's start with this one on the quiz. Okay, my intention next is to go through the key terms. Now, at this point, I cannot see the comments in my platform here. So I will check into the comments when we get to the question and answer session. So I will be monitoring those a little bit later. Please keep comments appropriate, right? We want to make sure that this is a classy endeavor, all right? So keep the comments appropriate. Let's not say anything crazy over there. Let's keep it historically based. Of course, at the end, if you have other questions, we'll answer them, but that's what we're looking for. Okay, going through the key terms. The first one is going to be prehistoric, also known as prehistory. This basically refers to the time period before the invention of writing. So anything that happened before writing was invented. We know the Sumerians invented writing around 3000 BC. The first form was called cuneiform. Prior to that, we only had artifacts, cave paintings, things of that nature to go off. So prehistory is before the invention of writing, anything that happened prior to 3000 BC, essentially. Next is the Neolithic Age. So we kind of went through these different ages in history. The Neolithic Age is actually called the New Stone Age. It's a time in which better and more polished and fashioned stone tools were deployed. The bookend dates on it would be roughly 8000 BC, all the way up to about 1000 BC. Now, before the Neolithic Ages, the Neolithic Age is where we've been spending most of our time in the class. However, before the Neolithic Age came the Paleolithic Age, and we're going to talk about that. This happened before. This was like 2.5 million BC up to 8000 BC. The Paleolithic Age is also known as the Old Stone Age. It's a time in which your basic stone tools were in use. Your basic stone tools were in use. Next is a development that early hominids did not have, but the Australopithecine, which was discovered by Mary Leakey, did have, and it's called the opposable thumb. It's where your thumb can cross over the digits on your hand. So your thumb can come across and touch your fingers. Imagine trying to pick up something without the thumb. It'd be very difficult. So the opposable thumb allowed early humans, early species, to be able to pick up objects and also create tools. So that was a major development historically. Next, we're going to talk about domestication. And when we take a look at domestication, we're generally talking about the domestication of animals. Domestication is also taming and control of animals for human use. For example, the dog, the pig, the goat, the horse, the chicken. These are some animals that are domesticable and were used to help humans. The biggest reason why you would domesticate animals includes a couple of factors. Number one would be for food. You would corral them, you would mate them or breed them, and then you would use them as a readily available supply of meat. Number two would be clothing. You could shave the wool off, you could make coats, blankets, so on and so forth. Number three would be hunting. The dogs and other animals would help with hunting, a little bit of protection, and then transportation. When you're talking about the horse or the ox or the camel, transportation became a big part of domestication. Next is specialization or specialized work. It's basically the development of skill in a specific kind of work. The development of skill in a specific kind of work. And what I mean by that is, once we had agriculture after the Neolithic Revolution, we didn't really have the need for everyone to be a farmer. And we really didn't need to have everyone being hunters and gatherers, right? So when we take a look at that, one of the key things that I really want you to know is that people took jobs making things by hand, crafts, pottery, clothing, jewelry, tools. Let's take a blacksmith, for example. When a blacksmith first starts making hammers, it's just a basic wood and stone block. Eventually, the hammerhead's made out of metal, and they try to invent new things, and they try different shapes, and they try different accessories. All of a sudden, they have prongs on the back so that if we hit a nail, we can pry it out, right? So as people work on this same specific job, they get better and better at it, and technology advances. So that's where specialization comes into play, and that's why it's very important to building a civilization. Next is the term ziggurat. Back in these early times, most groups like the Sumerians of Ur, like the Egyptians eventually, were polytheistic, meaning they worshiped many gods. But one thing that they have in common is they made temples. The ziggurat is the Sumerian word for temple. It was the largest and most important building in these early cities. Next is a very basic term, nomad. This is where we started with in the Paleolithic and the Neolithic age until we have the Neolithic Revolution at 8000 BC when we develop farming. Nomads are people that move from place to place in search of food and water. I had the diagram on the board and I had 6 stops on the board, right? We talked about how nomads would periodically move until they utilized all of the resources in an area. They would then move on for a few months to the next place, so on and so forth. Nomads were hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers are nomadic people that hunt animals and gather plants for food. So they survived off of hunting for meat and gathering the wild plants, the berries, the roots, the nuts, the grasses, so that they could survive. Once again, we said that mostly the gender roles were men did the hunting, women did the gathering, and I taught you that the women's role was far more important than the male role during this time. The vast majority of food came from the gathering. Next is the Neolithic Revolution. This is very, very basic. It happens in 8000 BC. It's basically the development of farming. It's a revolution because it led to widespread change for human life, and it occurred in many parts of the world around 8000 BC. Next is slash and burn farming. Slash and burn farming is basically where you cut down trees and wild grasses and then burn those trees and wild grasses to clear a field to build a crop field. So you're clearing out an area, you're creating an area that you can grow crops. Now, we did not know this at first, but through trial and error, humans figured out that if you actually burn the wild grasses and trees, the ash that sits on top of the soil has some nutrient value and serves as a fertilizer. So slash and burn farming was really the first form of farming used worldwide. Next is the term bronze. Bronze is a metal, but it's a mixture of 2 other metals. It's a mixture of copper and tin. It was created by the Sumerians. Once again, through trial and error, they were doing some experiments. They melted down copper, they melted down tin, they made molds of things, swords, tools. Eventually, they said, what happens if we mix these two? Well, when they did and it hardens, it creates a much stronger substance called bronze. This metal takes us into a new age. It took us into the Bronze Age. The Paleolithic and the Neolithic ages were using stone, right? The Bronze Age is a time period that spanned from 3000 to 1000 BC, in which bronze tools and weapons replaced stone tools and weapons. Major advancement. It's much more durable. You can fashion it into a very sharp edge, and it becomes advanced technology. Next, from section 1, the term hominids. Hominids are human-like creatures that walk upright. One of the first ones we learn about, Australopithecine, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, Homo sapien, right? One of the examples on the list here, Australopithecine, Homo habilis, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon. Don't really need to know too much about these. What you would need to know is all covered on the chart on page 8 and 9. So I would refer to that chart, the timeline at the top of the page. That will really help you out in understanding what you really need to know about these different groups. Next is cuneiform. As we mentioned earlier, the Sumerians invented the world's first writing system. This has had a very much wedge-shaped. You used a stylus, and scribes, which are professional record keepers, would use a stylus to carve into the wet clay, which would then harden in the sun and form clay tablets that could be used as a form of record keeping. I do want to remind you that back in these days, we didn't have money. Money was not yet invented. The concept of paper or coinage money was not yet invented. So there's no form of currency. In order to exchange goods, you had to barter. Now, bartering is to exchange goods and services without money. The next key term that we really want to have an understanding of is very, very basic. It's the term trade. Trade is much bigger than barter. Barter is where you exchange goods without money. Trade is just the exchange of goods. It could be with money, it could be without money, but trade is where you exchange goods. Could be within a city, could be within a country, could be within a much wider span, could be global, okay, as it might be today. Next, we're going to talk about the term artifact. An artifact is any human-made object, such as a tool or jewelry. Today, we had a question in our review game about human-made objects or nature-made objects, right? Only human-made objects are artifacts. A pen is an artifact, a pencil, a bow, an arrow, a dagger, a spear, an axe. Those are things that we as historians have utilized to study ancient peoples. Next is the term artisan. Artisans are workers that make items by hand. What would be some examples of artisans? Pottery workers, textile workers, people who make clothing, jewelers, blacksmiths, people who make tools and weapons. Those are some of the early examples of artisans in our world's history. Next, we're going to take a look at a key term, institutions. Institutions are long-lasting patterns of organization within a community. When we had the class discussion, we said one great example of an institution is St. Mary's Prep, right? Our school is an example of an institution. Other institutions, the Catholic Church, the prisons, the hospitals, right? Those have long-lasting patterns of organization. They're very consistent. They have a certain way of doing things. Civilizations needed to have institutions to be successful. Next, let's talk about irrigation. Irrigation was so important in helping groups become civilized. It's basically diverting water from a natural body, such as a river or a lake, sometimes, to a crop field in which you would use to water the plants. We have scribe, very important for record keeping. A scribe is a professional writer, a professional record keeper. Okay, we're moving our way down the list. Next, we have a series of ways that we use to date. This is one of the things that, because of the half-day schedule this week, I just wasn't quite able to teach in class. So I'm going to talk about it now. I was able to talk to most of you today about it, but it's used to date events. So when you see in your book 3000 BC, what BC stands for is before Christ, before the birth of Christ. So BC means before the birth of Christ. It's used to date things that happened before Christ's birth. AD is probably the toughest one to master. If you're following along with me, please write this down. AD actually stands for Anno Domini. It's Latin, ANNO DOMINI. And that is Latin for in the year of our Lord. AD is used to date events that happened after Christ's birth. I want to make this clear. Don't get confused and think AD means after death. It does not. It means after Christ's birth. Okay. If it meant after death, which it doesn't, I want to make sure, we would not have a way to date what happened during Christ's lifetime. So there'd be 32 to 34 years where we don't have any way to date. Now, oftentimes in college level texts or even in our book, you have to understand that we are a Catholic school. So we're going to generally use Christ and religious connotations, but you're going to find a lot of books that use BCE and CE. BCE means before Common Era. It's basically the same as BC. It's really used to date events that happened before Christ's birth, but without the religious connotation. It's more politically correct, you could say. CE stands for Common Era. It's the same as AD, but without the religious connotation. Okay. You will need to know this not only for tomorrow's quiz, but really throughout the rest of the year. Okay, at this time, I'm going to give you some clues as to the AP portion, right? We know that we had the reading assignment from AMSCO. That's this book right here. We had the hefty reading assignment. We had since Monday to do it. So I'm expecting that by now, you've mastered that material. Okay. This is like a college level class. If you pass this AP exam, you will get college credit. So I'm trying to get you ready for the college level of study. So I'm going to put this on you a little bit, but I'm going to give you some clues right now. What you really need to focus on from that reading, okay, are the following concepts. Number one, It's the historical reasoning processes. I like to call them the 3 C's. They are comparison, causation, and continuity and change over time. Comparison is pretty easy. Comparing two things. How do they compare? Comparing the Sumerians to the Egyptians, comparing nomads to settled lifestyles. All of this information can be found in the reading. But to give you a better idea, one of the things that you need to take a look at are, of course, the historical reasoning processes right there, if you can see that. And you can see there talks very carefully about comparison, causation, and continuity and change over time. This is the most important part of that reading. Next, I want to clue you in on the second most important part of that reading, and that is the 4 key question types that will be on your AP exam at the end of the year. There are 4 question types. I would like you to be able to name them and explain them. You have the MCQ, which stands for multiple choice questions. These multiple choice questions are not normal multiple choice questions. On the AP exam, you're going to have an excerpt, which is called a primary source or a document or an image. And then you're going to have to diagnose that passage and then answer a multiple choice question about it. And you have to relate it to your historical knowledge. So they are not simple questions. Okay. The second type of question is called an SAQ. That stands for short answer questions. You're looking at a paragraph to 2 paragraph responses there. Then you have 2 essays. One is called a DBQ. That means document based question. It will have 7 documents that you must read and analyze. Then you need to develop a thesis based essay. Finally, you have the LEQ, which is the long essay question. It's the same as a DBQ, but it does not have the 7 documents. You need to formulate a thesis, which is an argument. I will teach you about all of this later in the year, but you do need to know that these are the 4 question types. They were outlined and discussed in the reading. Those are just 2 things you need to know. So I'm giving you 2 clues. There's a lot more to the story. I want to see if you can comprehend. All right, ballers and ballerinas. Next, getting ready for the quiz tomorrow. I am ready to get into the question and answer session. So I'm going to go and open up the comments now, and I'll be taking a look at what you have. So one of the things that we are looking into here now is what you want to do. You're doing a great job. I see that you're all here. I really do appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time to be here. What you want to do at this time is if you have any key questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. I'll pull them up on the screen and I will answer them for you. So that's what we're doing. We're getting ready for tomorrow's quiz. As long as it's historically related, I will do my best to answer it. All right. All right, here we go. First question, where can we find the social classes of Ur? Page 22 has a diagram of the social classes. It's right within the text. It is kind of difficult to figure out, so let me go ahead and give you the answer. Basically, the social classes of Ur, which is particularly detailed on your review sheet, at the top you have rulers and priests, right? Rulers and priests are at the very top. They're like the upper class. The middle class, for example, would be considered the merchants, people who buy and sell things in the marketplace. The lower class at this time, for example, would be the artisans. These are the people who are making things by hand, your skilled workers. All right, I'm going to go back to the comments here. All right, this next question is the Neolithic age until 1000 BC or 3000 BC? Okay, let me clear this up. The Neolithic age goes from 8000 BC, that's when it starts, and it ends at 3000 BC. Okay, 8000 to 3000 BC. Next, we have, do we need to know the key places? Yes, you need to know the key places. They are on the review sheet. Anything that's on the review sheet, you must know. Okay, yes, indeed. Question, what are disadvantages of being settled? All right, let's take a look at this. So once you settle in one place, you're definitely going to have a farm. So what happens is you are no longer moving. Nomadic peoples who are still going to be out there will see your farm and they're like, aha, food source, we're going to attack. So when you are settled, one disadvantage is that you're susceptible to attack by nomads. Another disadvantage is as you become settled, you live in close proximity. And when you live in close proximity, a natural disaster, a drought, a flood, a fire, a disease could spread very quickly and could cause great damage. So that's just two examples. Along that line of thinking, though, you should be able to come up with a few more. Okay, when we say disadvantages, that would also be negative. So I just answered that one. DBQ just means document-based question. It's a essay that has 7 documents that you have to diagnose, analyze, and then create a thesis. LEQ is a long essay question. You must also have a thesis, but you don't have to deal with the 7 documents. Sir Ducky Lover. Okay, gotcha. I know. Okay, that's cool. Last year we had somebody named Sir Ducky that would come and ask questions. What is the Fertile Crescent? The Fertile Crescent is a region of Mesopotamia. So it's a very fertile area and it's shaped like a moon. So it's crescent shaped. It's located in modern day Iraq. All right. So ancient Mesopotamia. And particularly, it's located between 2 rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. So it's located in the Middle East. Okay. Refer to the map at the opening part of the chapter to find where the Fertile Crescent is. All right. So for the key places, it's not part of the assigned work. So you don't have to write it. You just need to know it. So what I would say, Fertile Crescent is a region in Mesopotamia that had very fertile soil. And it was one of the first places that agriculture developed. And then Sumer is a region within Mesopotamia that we've been using a lot of our examples from. The Sumerians were the first people to develop the wheel, the sail, the plow. They created the first written language, which was cuneiform. The city of Ur is one of the first cities ever to be constructed, one of the first civilizations in our world's history. Jaden, I do have multiple versions of the quiz. So that's why I have many possibilities on the review sheet. So that's the best I can tell you there. Yeah. Doesn't really matter, shouldn't really change anything for you. Whatever quiz you get, you answer those questions. Yes, indeed. Okay, next, let's see. Do we need to know the years in which things went down? Okay, at the beginning of the year, I promised you I'd never ask you a specific date. I'm not going to ask you like, what year did Mary Leakey discover Lucy or the Australopithecine? No. What you do need to know is time spans, though. Like you do need to know that the Bronze Age lasted from 3000 to 1000. You need to know that around 3000 BC, we had the world's first system of writing. So those are rough dates that you need to have an understanding of. Yes, you do need to be able to put things into historical perspective. Okay, so in that AMSCO reading, it's basically telling you about how to prepare for the AP exam. It's talking about how to think historically, right? It's talking about how this book can help you. So there's no actual history yet in the AMSCO reading. So you need to focus on what is in that reading. That is the type of questions that will come your way. The content portion of the quiz, which is the 40 question part, will talk about all the historical value. Okay, so we already talked about the disadvantages tonight. We said you're susceptible to attack. You could have disease. You could have natural disasters, right? The advantages of settled life are so fortuitous. You have a readily available supply of food, which is from farming, right? You no longer have to hunt and gather. You no longer have to have everyone being farmers. So people can then develop other jobs, which increases technology, advances your civilization, right? People develop things like irrigation. They develop things like weapons and tools for defense. They start to make better structures as they have more time to build buildings. instead of spending all of their time hunting and gathering. You have domestication of animals where you can corral and keep in one spot. And so therefore, you're going to have a high propensity to have more food readily available. So I think there's more advantages than disadvantages, but there are still some disadvantages. What was found at Fertile Crescent? Well, the Fertile Crescent is where civilization began. So Sumer, the city of Ur, the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, they're from the Fertile Crescent region. At the end of the question and answer, I'll pull up a map and I'll show you guys and gals exactly where the Fertile Crescent was located. Okay, the most important hominid characteristic is the opposable thumb. So when we take a look at Australopithecine, which Lucy was, the most important thing that early archaeologists found is that that species had the opposable thumb, which the thumb could cross over the digits, which meant you could pick up objects. And then also it meant that you could build tools because you had manual dexterity. Easy question for me. I had a great summer. I spent most of my time with my 3 daughters. We did lots of adventures. Of course, I enjoy, summertime being outside and being active. So yeah, I had a great summer. I'm really excited to be back at school. And I'm really fired up for tonight's session and tomorrow's quiz. Yes. So for the 4 question types, DBQ, MCQ, SAQ, LEQ, you're going to have to be able to explain them, and they are explained in the book. So yes, that is part of what you need to be able to do for sure. What do we need to know about Sumer? Everything that the Sumerians invented, right? And the fact that civilization began there. So the wheel, the sail, the plow, cuneiform, all of those different things happened first in Sumer. I did just answer this one, but I'll answer it again. Advantages of living in a settled place would be readily available supply of food, and then not having to work everyone as farmers and hunters and gatherers. So then they can focus on other jobs, which is called specialization. So that helps advance technology, so on and so forth. Like I said, Cro-Magnon can be found on page 7 and 8, 8 and 9 at the top. What you'll need to know about Cro-Magnon is that it's part of the process in getting us to Homo sapien. They had similar body frame. The only difference between Cro-Magnon and Homo sapien is brain size. Okay. The AP questions on the AP portion will not be multiple choice. Those will all be short answer questions. So there'll be 2 to 5 questions, and they'll all be written response that you have to actually prove to me that you know what you're talking about. That's going to be the most challenging part of this assessment tomorrow. It's the AP part. That's where I'm really going to throw the challenge at you. How many days do we get to finish the AP exam? At the end of the year, you get 1 day. It's a 4.5-hour test. You need to know Mary Leakey's famous archaeologist. She discovered footprints of Australopithecine, which is blatantly detailed in the textbook. Which class won the review? The review class, the review game, the +1 goes to second hour. Second hour scored 6 out of 7. So those ballers, the boys class in second hour, will receive +1 on tomorrow's quiz. Congratulations, second hour ballers. Definitely. As we stated in class, you need to not only list, but you need to define. And part of that definition, I gave you a lot of examples in class on the 5 characteristics. So you definitely need to provide examples. For example, the 5th characteristic is advanced technology. So when you take a look at advanced technology, you need to know some examples: irrigation, using animal power, bronze tools and weapons, right? There you go. This one I've already answered about 4 times tonight, so I'm not going to go over that one again because I've already answered it at least 4 times. Sorry. Classification of those 6 on the bottom of page 22. I'm not quite sure what you mean. Rephrase that question. I'll come back to it. Are you meaning social classes? Yeah, that I already went over as well today. So I said that the upper class are rulers and priests. I said that the middle class are merchants. And then I also said that the lower class were the artisans. Okay, the time span on the Paleolithic age. The Paleolithic age is the Old Stone Age. It's the oldest time period. It goes 2.5 million BC all the way to 8,000 BC. So it's a huge span of time. It's all the way until 8,000 BC. Okay. Yep, Sam's got the answer there on Paleolithic. Very good. Okay, here's a good question. So the important pages that I've listed on your review sheet, what you're going to need to know, those are maps, charts, graphs. So you need to study, okay, geographically speaking, where are we talking about here? Middle East, Africa, right? That's where we started. The most important one, maybe put a star or put a box around it, is the graph on page 21, which gives you detailed examples of the 5 characteristics. So, I mean, it's really hard for me to tell you exactly what you need to know. You just need to study those pages because they're going to be helpful in your overall understanding. Everything that I taught you in the outline, like everything I taught you in the outline, I went very, very slow, point for point, subletter for subletter. That's what you need to know. I even said this in class. I'm like, I'm expecting you to teach this back to me. I want you to show me that you actually understand this material. I don't promote just basic memorization. You're going to need to really prove to me that you know this information. So you're going to have to be very detailed in your response to get credit. Once again, yes, list, define, provide examples. Yes, indeed. Prove to me that you know it. We need to know that Mary Leakey discovered the early footprints, which were of an Australopithecine, which gave us some of the early findings of hominids in Central Africa. No, any of those terms I could work into a short answer. I could work into a true or false. I could work into a fill in the blank. Could be anything. We miss you too, Serena. You're still a Realm family. You're still part of the Realm family. Um, you know, Ian, there's always going to be some things that come from the reading or that aren't on the review sheet. You know what I mean? Like, I don't intend to tell you every last thing. There's got to be, with covering so much information like we did, there might be a couple things on there that aren't, but there'll definitely be something from the reading or from the notes, right? So just because it's not on the review sheet doesn't mean it's not fair game for the quiz. Hey, Hunter, nice to see you again. Thanks for joining up. I appreciate the support, man. I hope everything's going well for you. Yeah, it talked about how humans eventually migrated out of Africa, right? So we have that map at the start. So that's kind of going back to the other question about what do we need to know about these pages? Well, it kind of shows you that, okay, human life starts in Africa, then they end up in Europe, and then eventually in Asia, and then eventually to Australia, and eventually much later to North America. So yeah, you need to know that map for sure. Neanderthal is more information to be found on page 8 and 9. Neanderthal is not a link to humans, but a separate species that eventually died off because while they were well built and they had strong muscles, they didn't have the same brain capability. So they got outsmarted by Cro-Magnon man. Cro-Magnon was able to communicate better through verbal language, whereas Neanderthal wasn't. And so the Cro-Magnon were able to out-hunt the Neanderthal, which eventually led to the Neanderthal's extinction. Well, Adelina, all of the pages are important, but I did tell you that you need to know the historical reasoning processes and the 4 AP question types. Dev, the format of the quiz is actually on your review sheet. It says down here at the bottom, it says, if you can see this, it says quiz format right there. So you've got multiple choice, matching, true and false, fill in the blank, and then you do have short answer. And then you're also going to have extended response questions. So you're going to be doing some what I call selected response, where the answers are there, you have to choose them, but you're also going to be doing some created response, where you have to actually write the answers out. These changes include things like settled lifestyle, advanced technology, specialized work, record keeping, all the 5 characteristics. But then you also have advanced technology, which made human life easier, the construction of cities. All of these things are not possible without farming. Remember, without the development of agriculture, everyone today would still be hunting and gathering. So we would be spending all of our time hunting and gathering, which means we wouldn't be living in very large populations because we'd have a limited amount of food, and which also means we would not have anything that we have today. So the development of farming is everything. Everything that civilization has is due to the development of farming. Nope. You don't have to know those specific dates. Serena's coming in play. Thank you, Serena. Thank you, Madison. Those are some ballers from their juniors. They're coming on. They were going through these review sessions last year. So, all right. It looks like the questions have ceased. I really just want to say my final advice is, this is going to be an adventure. I want you to be nervous. I want you to be challenged. I think that's good. I honestly do. I don't think you're going to get any better as a student if you take everything easy and if everything comes easy. If classes are easy, they're not getting you ready. So what you really need to do is you really need to make sure that you do challenge yourself on this quiz. My intent is to give you a challenge. Like I say, this is going to be the easiest quiz of the year. They'll definitely get harder as we go. But for right now, we want to take on this challenge, okay? So my final words of advice, read through your notes several times through tonight. Study off of the review sheet. If you're still confused, watch my video lessons, right? I've got you covered. Rewatch this session. Send me an email if you need help. I'm there for you. I do this for you. I think that it's important. I think it's beneficial. A lot of good questions tonight. I think we can improve on paying attention. I did find myself repeating myself quite a bit, but that's okay. It's the first time. So we're trying to get used to that. I just want to say thank you for joining. I appreciate all of the work that you've put in, and I'm looking forward to a great day tomorrow. Thanks again, and have a wonderful night. Don't forget to say the prayer of gratitude, and also make sure you say thank you to your parents. God bless you. Have a wonderful night. See you tomorrow.